Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
Welcome along to another episode of Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast. As ever, for nearly 4 years now, you've got me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
I very nearly said me, Dave B then.
Which has happened.
Oh, it's happened many times, hasn't it? You'd think really after 4 years we should know who we are. Well, you always know who you are, actually. It's me that always messes it up. Anyway, here we are, 62 episodes deep, and we've got a good one this time. No main interview this time, Dave, though. A little bit different to usual.
It actually wasn't us, in fairness, for real disclosure. We have had this episode nearly ready to go for a little while. It is behind schedule for our usual standards, but unfortunately, it's that time of the year where breweries they're always busy, but they're exceptionally busy at the moment because it's festival season. You know, the tap rooms are going to be busier with the nice weather we've recently had and everything, and it's just been a bit of a job pinning down people to get them to talk to us. But where there's a will, there's a way, and previous friends of the podcast stepped in unexpectedly, it must be added.
Yeah, it was a nice little surprise we had in the post. Some beers arrived for us both. We thought, oh, these look interesting. And we thought, I tell you what, let's drink these on the podcast. So we won't tell you what the beers are just yet. Have to wait and see. But then we've got the people who made them to come on to talk to us as well. So it's quite interesting. 4 summer beers as well. So perfect for the nice weather we've been having recently. We've also got the Brewer's Wife here with tales from behind the scenes at the Copper Beach Brewing Company in Kidderminster. We've got Tried and Tested with our favourite beers since our last episode.
We are all over a new hop variety in Hypertribe.
We are. It's not a brewery or a beer. It's, it does feature a brewery and a beer, but it's the hop that we're hyping or triping. So stay listening for that. But meanwhile, let's start it off as we always do with Brew to Me, where we try a beer from a brewery we haven't had before.
You came through with the assist on this, to be fair, because you were drowning at one point in Brew to Me's, whereas I was coming up a little bit empty, and you made contact with Brewing Brothers, who are based down in Folkestone, and they very kindly came back to us, and I was the lucky recipient of the cans, of which I will try and keep you at least one back.
You didn't just get cans, though, did you? There was something else as well.
Oh, there was 1 second, because I actually haven't donned these, and perhaps I should see if they're a lucky pair of socks to go with my other job. But one second, I'll show you them, Dave.
He's got a pair of socks. He's currently removing his headphones to get said socks. You're listening to this in real time. He's left his seat, headphones are off, microphone's down, and he's gone to locate the socks. Here they are. He's coming back into shot now. Let's see. I'm intrigued to see what these socks look like. Don't see many breweries producing socks, do you? Just saying, Dave, you don't see many breweries having socks on their merch stand.
Really don't, which I thought was brilliant. So here we go. I don't know if you can see these very well. They are...
Oh, yeah. Nice.
They're quite a tie-dye pair. You've jogged my memory. I'm going to wear these to work tomorrow now. They've sat there. I've been waiting to show them off to you. One thing and another's happened, and I got distracted.
So you've got beer and socks. What was it? It doesn't get much better, does it?
No, I do love a bit of merch. Yeah, I got a lovely box from them, and them is Ned and Charlie, who are the Brewing Brothers, and also with the help of Billy, who we will hear from. They've put together the whole operation down in Folkestone. There's a tap room already. There is Hastings Pizza.
Yeah, from what I understand, they've got not only the brewery and the tap room, but another 3 venues as well for their beers.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
They've really made their mark in their local area, which is what we love to see.
But what's the beer like? That's the big question. What beer have you got then?
Well, as I say, I have plenty to choose from. But as the weather has finally decided to try and be summer, it felt only right to try the table beer, which is called Table Beer.
Keep it to the point. It's like musicians who name their album after themselves, isn't it? You know where you are.
So this is a very low ABV table beer, actually. This is only 2.5%. It is gluten-free for those who need that. Yeah, tick in that box as well. Can doesn't say what hops are involved, but We are told by Billy that it's British hops being used in this table beer, Jester and Olicana, which is a nice change from seeing table beers using Citra and Mosaic and Simcoe, for example. Nothing wrong with that, but it's nice to see something a bit different.
Yeah, we get bored, don't we, of everything being the same, every brewery doing the same types of beers with the same types of hops. So it is nice when something different comes along.
You can taste the fact that it's different hops, actually. I don't drink enough of either to know which one is doing it, but I know there's a very distinctive taste to one of them. It's really quite full. It's not a bitter sensation. It's makes sense. Do you know what I mean with that?
You get what you get. So how does, because that's only really low ABV, how does that match up in terms of some of the other table beers that we've had?
It's refreshing. It's got a decent body to it. It does give away a little bit at the end, but only ever so slightly. But it doesn't go just watery. It's just giving way a bit. But that's sort of fine because it makes you come back again. It does taste of its ABV, I would say, but not like 0.5% low ABV, if that makes sense. Like earlier today, I had a beer which was 3.4%. I'd be quite confident in saying that I would think I'd know this was tasting less than that.
Tell you what, let's have a listen to Billy, and he can sort of fill us in on the background to this beer and the brewery.
Hey guys, it's Billy here. I'm the head brewer at Brewing Brothers. We are based in sunny Hastings down in Sussex. We've been so since 2016, although we have grown a bit since then. But we started off brewing on a 2.5 barrel kit behind the bar in our pub, the Imperial, in 2016. It was a pretty simple time back then. We just served our homebrew beer alongside some pretty excellent wood-fired pizza. But fast forward 7 years, and we've now got 3 venues in addition to a 28 hectolitre brewery with taproom as well. We brew a core range of 5 to 6 beers, as well as a fairly steady stream of collaborations and specials, as well as continuing to brew small batch stuff on our original kit, which still resides in the Imperial. You guys wanted me to talk about our table beer today, which I think is great. It's a fairly new beer on the roster. We brewed the first batch earlier this year and have been tweaking it since, and we're obviously trying to build body to replace what weight the alcohol would have given the beer. It can be quite a hard task to do, but basically we try and build quite a complex grist with a lot of oats, a lot of less and unfermentable grains, and we also mash in at a really high temperature to encourage less fermentability and more residual sugars in the beer. As I said, we've been playing around with this recipe quite a bit. The batch you guys received perhaps isn't the fullest mouthfeel we've achieved from this beer, but I think it's an important part of the process. We're not necessarily a brewery that strives for consistency. We like to experiment and learn from that process. I think a really cool thing to highlight about that beer is the fact that it only contains hops from the UK, Jester and Olicana T45. This is something we've been having a lot of fun with in a lot of our beers, trying to use hops from the UK to achieve flavours you might expect from other hops from other parts of the world, like the US or New Zealand or Australia. I'd say it's most notable in a collaboration we did with Docker and Hive. It was a sort of New England style with Old England hops, really juicy, really bright tropical flavours. It was a great beer. Also, our climate positive pale Reforestation is one of our top selling beers, and again it only features UK hops. We do this for a few reasons. Firstly, to reduce the air miles on the ingredients we get in, therefore helping to improve our carbon footprint. The brewing industry is quite high in energy consumption, and whatever we can do to reduce that is great. And as we all know, our climate is changing, and therefore, as does our terroir, meaning the flavour of the UK hops will change in the coming years, and we wanted to stay ahead of the game in this regard. But I'd say the most rewarding reason for this is the provenance. It allows us to have traceability on the ingredients going into our beer, and allows us to create relationships with farmers and growers. So most notably, again, our most local hop farm, where the Wheeler family have been growing hops for decades. Their target is showcasing our lager as a standalone hop. We're always just super impressed with the freshness and the flavours coming from it. So yeah, if you want to try our beers, cans are available online at brewingbrothers.org, or pop in and see us at one of our venues. We've got the Imperial in Hastings, which is the brew pub with the pizza oven. We've also got the pasta bar and tap room down at the Courtyard at the Sauce Park in Hastings, which is fresh pasta made daily and 14 beers on tap and amazing cocktails and everything else. And then we've also got our beachside restaurant in Folkestone on the Harbour Arm, which again is just an amazing location right on the beach in Folkestone. A really good selection of beers. We've got a pizza oven there as well as doing a load of small plates. or you can come straight to the brewery. The tap room's open Thursday to Sunday. It's a little oasis in an industrial estate, especially in the middle of summer. It's removed from the town. We've got a veg garden and chickens, where we grow all our own produce, which makes its way to our venues for weekly specials, stuff like that. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, they can reach out to us on Instagram or Facebook or email. And yeah, once again, guys, thanks for having us on. Hope you enjoy the beers and enjoy the socks.
Well, that's interesting there, because what Billy was saying sort of reflects what you were saying about the beer, because he touched on them trying to get the fullness back into the beer that isn't there because of that low ABV. And he was saying that they've tinkered with it several times, and the version that you're drinking there isn't their very latest version. So they're obviously aware of that gap.
It's not a criticism as such, but I think, as you say, if it's that tinkering process which brewers love to do, and I think there's just probably a little bit of wiggle room left. They're saying it's got a high percentage of oat grist because they're really trying to get that body and that full fluffiness in there, and it's there, but it probably could be enhanced a little bit, and I don't think that's unfair to say.
Well, they said it themselves, didn't they? So
yeah, it's a nice beer. I stand by oiliness. It's also a bit peppery as well. It works really well.
It's nice to know that we can produce the sort of beers that me and you are used to drinking with British hops, though, because I think we sometimes forget that because there's so many US hops and Australian and New Zealand hops around.
I think, if anything, they've sort of showed here that there's probably a market, do a slightly heavier ABV version of that, or what can you do with a session pale in the 4% type range for these hops, see a bit more of those around. I'd be interested to try them.
What else have you got from them to try?
So I've also got Stir Hazy, which is a New England IPA, 5%. They sent MVP IPA, 4.7%. They also sent me their Sussex Lager, and they did do a collab as well, who I can't think who it's with. It's in the fridge, but I've got that. And I think I've got Low Tide, which is a pale, which is only 3.5%. So they're sort of doing the nice low ABV stuff. And then they've... I don't have this, but I do notice on their website there is an Imperial Coffee Stout, which looks right up your alley, Dave, because it's a 750ml bottle.
Oh, this must be one of their small batch brews that Billy mentioned. Oh, that sounds nice.
Yeah, you can see it on their website. It does look very nice. There's also some malt whiskey knocking around. It looks very much a Christmassy style beer, but yeah, no, I haven't got that, but I have got plenty of lovely things to try from. Just
thinking out loud and looking ahead, maybe when it comes to the festive time, we should have a look at some of the breweries we've spoken to during 2024 and find some interesting beers from them that people could try for Christmas. Beers like that really appeal for the time of year. Might be an idea.
Definitely.
Well, I am going to... Well, have a guess where I'm going to, Dave. Where do I always go these days on Brew to Me?
Well, you usually end up in Wales.
Well, I'm there again. We've unearthed so many great breweries in Wales with this feature, and hopefully we've got another one here. This one is called Zulu Alpha Brewing, and they're based in Caldicot in Monmouthshire. So a different part of Wales to where we've been in recent episodes. And I'm really excited about these guys. Well, you'll hear all about this beer, actually. It's called Freedom, and it was to celebrate coming out of lockdown, and it's one of their sort of core beers now. They came out of lockdown, produced this beer, and then opened a tap room. So it's all been going on for them in the last few years. And what they're really big on is hazy IPAs, basically. And this is a New England IPA, 5%, with Sabro and Citra.
Okay, an interesting combination. Now, I don't know if you're going to talk about it anyway. I'm sure you will, but it feels worth me just mentioning back to mine quickly. Pricing wise for my beers is brilliant. They're all about $3.50 a can, and actually incredibly yours are cheaper.
Wow.
So the beer that you're talking about admittedly is out of stock at the moment, £3.10.
You don't need to pay £8 a can, do you, for a decent craft beer?
Nope. They do a Kolsch, which is out of stock as well, $2.50.
Yeah, I know they do a Kolsch. When I found out that, I thought I know somebody who quite liked that. Okay. Well, this is great. So you say Sabro and Citra. What would you be thinking?
I don't love Sabro. I think that's been well documented. And I've had a couple of beers recently which have had Sabro in, and it's reminded me why I'm not a huge fan, because they've actually been quite heavy, Sabro. Okay. So I would be expecting that big old coconut taste, which I find a bit much after a while.
Yeah, and it's there. There's no denying it's definitely there. I quite like it. It's not really in your face, but it's definitely there. You can't really miss it. It says here, this New England Pale Ale is beautifully full-bodied, tick, and hazy, tick, with a uniquely complex flavour and aroma of tangerine, coconut and tropical fruits. And that's more ticks there again. Does absolutely what it says it wants to do. These guys have been going for a good few years now, and it sounds like they've got a real good sense of community in their area with the brewery. It fits in well with the locals. I'll pass over to David now and he can tell you all about it, and you'll hear exactly what I mean.
Hi, I'm David Johns. I'm a joint owner of Zulu Alpha Brewing. We're based in the historic castle town of Caldecott in Monmouthshire. We started in 2018. We were just two mates that got a bit carried away with home brewing. Decided to take it up to the next level in the commercial world, probably the same as most craft breweries. We've got an 8.5 barrel brew house, quite old, certainly not a pretty setup, but it does everything we need it to. And we've got 6 vessels that we ferment into and condition the beer in. People ask about the name, Zulu Alpha Brewing. Basically, we've got day jobs and we work with the Ministry of Defence and the Royal Navy supporting the submarine flotilla. And Zulu Alpha Brewing is actually a surface ship term, but just something that we thought had a pretty cool ring to it. As far as the beers go that we brew, we do a bit of everything, well we try to. So we have some dark beers on offer and some lagers. Generally Caldecott is our sort of best seller. People like a lager, certainly in the summer. But really our sort of passion is in the hoppy pale ales. I think, a lot of craft breweries, that's kind of where their heart lies. And certainly the New England style is something that we really, really enjoy. And we like to brew the beers that we like to drink. So we do a lot of hoppy pale ales. I've got a number of favourites, but Evolution is probably one that's, strikes a chord with me. It was the first beer we ever brewed when we set up Zulu Alpha Brewing, and it was named basically as a reference to the evolution from home brewing into the commercial world. It's an American pale ale, 5.2%, and it's jam-packed full of Citra and Amarillo in the dry hop. So it's got plenty of stone fruit character and just a really, really nice, easygoing beer. We do, a number of New England pale ales, or sort of the session side of it, so not ridiculously strong, around the 5% mark. Freedom is one of those, and it was named after, at the end of lockdown really, celebrating coming out of lockdown and return to freedom for people to be able to leave the houses and go to the pub. Coincided with us opening the tap room at the brewery. We'd had a few different business models over the years, obviously starting in 2018 and then lockdown happening. With COVID, changed our business model. Then coming out of COVID, again, we sort of changed our business model. So Freedom really that was the first beer that we put out there at the tap room as like a real celebration of coming out of lockdown. It's dry hop with Sabro as a single hop, and you get plenty of sort of coconut tangerine type character. Sabro is a very unique and distinctive hop, and again, goes down the treat with the customers. Citra IPA, named after the hop that is single hopped with. Again, Citra is just such an awesome hop. There's just a lot of depth to the hop. It's not just citrusy. We get plenty of tropical notes in the aroma and the flavour as well. And we love that, and it's a really good seller for us. The newest beer that we've done is going down a storm. It's a session pale ale called Life's a Beach, and that is dry hop with Citra and Mosaic. And it's summer in a glass, and really it is. And there's plenty of citrus character in there. There's lots of sort of refreshing crispness to it. We've been working on sort of a small batch series as well, called the Idea range. We've had a couple of beers in there so far and a few more planned. No Idea was the first one, 7.5%, like sort of true New England style with this sort of strength and the character to it. Dry hop with Idaho 7 cryo hops. That went down the treat. And the Crazy Idea was the most recent one, 8.4%. Dry hop with Laurel and Simcoe. And again, plenty of depth of character to that one. I could talk beer all day, you can probably tell. But probably the best way to round this off would be to just welcome everyone down here to the tap room. Call in if you can, come and have a beer, come and have a chat. Myself, Tasha, Leanne, we'll talk beer all day long. So please just come along and have a chat. If you can't do that, then please get on our website, visit our web shop, have a look what's there. If you can't see what you're looking for, by all means give us a ring. Our details are on the website. And yeah, happy to take your call or answer emails, and yeah, look forward to seeing you. Yucky da. Cheers.
Yeah, some interesting stuff there raised by David. I was particularly interested in their idea range of beers, their small batch stuff. And it seems more and more people are doing these small batch brews now, often keeping hold of their original kit, one of their first kits, and just brewing some interesting beers on it. And I guess as you get bigger and you have a core range, probably for the brewers it gets a little bit repetitive. They like to go back to that old kit, remind themselves of the olden days and make something interesting on it.
And I think it makes sense now as well for these guys that if you make a core range and the core range is what's keeping the lights on, that's what you have to keep brewing. But then if you do have access to doing it, this is the way to, as you say, get the sort of creative juices flowing again and do some small stuff that is, a bit different to what you're probably brewing 4 out of 5 days a week type thing.
I've got to say that beer, having another mouthful there, is so soft. So soft. That's impressive. Do you think
would it be sort of, it's not a fair comparison, but obviously if you'd have had that and you didn't know it was from them, and someone said, "Oh, it's one of the usuals who you think make all the hazies in the UK," like you go, "Yeah, okay."
No, I think that is pillowy soft. So to me, it's not like a Daya, certainly not a Verdant. It's much softer than those.
Oh, high praise indeed. I would sort of say it's a compliment if it does mirror, but if it actually is better because you can tell that it's not different, that's even better.
What is interesting is, remember when we tried Dark Elements from Wales, and they were very soft. I wonder if there's something to do with the
Welsh water.
The Welsh water. Yeah. I reckon that must have something to do with this. Now, that is impressive. And what is also impressive is that the guys down there didn't send us just one voice note. No, they've sent us 2 voice notes, so we can now hear from Tash at the brewery as well.
Hi, I'm Tasha Collins. I'm a brewery assistant at Zulu Alpha. I've gone from brewing small, stovetop brew-in-a-bag style batches to learning the ropes of commercial brewing with David at the brewery. It's been a fun year so far. I'm really enjoying my varied role, which could include anything from brewing with David to packaging beer, organising events and working at the tap room. I've been a beer enthusiast for many years now, and think it's really ace that we can make and sell beer to the people of Caldicot and beyond, especially having spent so many years having to travel to places like Cardiff and Bristol to try out craft beer in those kind of places. It's fantastic as well to see how Zulu Alpha has evolved from being a small brewery that has delivered beer to people's doorsteps to opening the tap room, and now we're part of the community in Caldicot. We're really busy on the weekends at the tap room. We have street food vendors every Friday, a monthly quiz, different kinds of events that bring everyone together. It's great to see how now the brewery's involved that way. I love all the beers at Zulu Alpha, I'm not going to lie. I think we've got a decent range to offer for both beer enthusiasts and newcomers to craft beer. My favourite has to be Citra IPA. It's a well-balanced hazy, I think, bursting with lots of flavour. I also enjoy Broken Tile if I'm in the mood for something with a bit more malt character. That's a nice American IPA, dry hop with mosaic. Whilst my favourite thing about working at the brewery is probably brewing, I also get a real buzz from people coming into the tap room to try our beers for the first time. We do get a lot of people who've never tried modern style sort of craft beer before, and they come and visit because they've seen us on social media and they know we get busy. And it's just great to see their reactions to all the different beers. Obviously, even better when they come back for more. Yeah, come on down and check us out. We've got great beer, street food, and what I think is equally important is the great community atmosphere that we've got. Everyone's welcome at the brewery. We've got a castle just stone's throw away from us, a lovely coastal path. I think it would make a great day out if you're not from the area. Equally, if you cannot get to Caldicot, check us out online and we can get some beer shipped out to you, I'm sure. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Tash. I mean, what comes across there is she clearly loves what she's doing there, helping out with the brewing, well, helping out with everything, actually. She does a bit of everything. She's who I spoke to get them on the podcast. She really loves getting stuck in. And it really came across, listening to her talk there, what an important role the brewery plays in the community. And I see this more and more, actually, when I go around to visit tap rooms and breweries and bars. Craft beer can be really pivotal in a community and play a big part in it if done correctly.
Yeah, and I think, as we often end up sort of saying with this feature, I think we find that because of the breweries we talk to, this is what a lot of them do primarily, or not primarily, obviously primarily they're brewing beer, but it's a very important thing of being a big focal part of the community, because that's obviously where the main customers are going to be.
I was really quite surprised to hear, they've got a tap room up and running, and I'd never heard of them before I came across them for this, but the tap room's thriving by the sounds of it, and it really made me want to go there and have a look. So next time I'm in the area, I will do. That's really impressive. Really enjoyed that beer. I'm glad I've got some more of it, and they sent some up for you as well, so you can try it too.
Oh, wonderful.
No, that's really good.
Daftaboutcraft.
Yes, well, we mentioned at the top of the show that there's no interview this time, but we do have a brewery coming along to speak to us in the form of a voice note to accompany this section we're going to do now. And this came about when we received 4 beers in the post from Stewart Brewing in Edinburgh, our friends up there. And whenever they release a new beer, one of their Project 7 beers, they're kind enough to always send us one, which is absolutely amazing. It's always lovely to receive them.
It is, and it's always unexpected. We genuinely don't ask. We actually thought, I thought when these beers turned up, it was a different beer that we were waiting on for this episode.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, and we were very pleased to get, as you say, very pleased to get these in the post. And then upon looking at them and the lovely weather and everything else that was going on, we thought, you know what, these are a nice little talking point. Not least because one of the beers, the first one I'm going to try in a second, doesn't actually have any alcohol in it.
It's just right for summer nights or those who may be called upon to get up in the middle of the night to look after small children. So we've got a rhubarb radler, got an alcohol-free beer, we've got a raspberry and honey beer, and a beer called Gardener's Brew. So between the two of us, we're going to have all 4 beers, and then Gareth and Sam will be along to talk you through it from their point of view with tasting notes and how they decided to make the beers and why they made them. So, Dave, what have you got there?
So I've started with the alcohol-free. I thought it was only right.
The alcohol-free scene has changed a lot, hasn't it? A real lot recently. There's more and more beers coming out, and I'm hearing more people when I'm out and about asking for alcohol-free craft options as well.
There was an article, wasn't there, as well, which got a little bit of traction on craft beer sort of media channels from Time Out, which was sort of discussing, have we sort of seen the end of the hazy pale as we know it? There was a lot I didn't actually agree with the article.
Yeah, same here.
It didn't make much sense, but in part. But one thing that I did pick up on, which I've heard loads, is that the sort of generation coming through now drinking as it stands, not very interested in alcohol, almost alcohol-free and very low alcohol beers of what a younger crowd wants. For what it's worth, all these things are cyclical, and I suspect we'll have the generation after that. We'll probably go back to wanting more alcohol.
Yeah, your little one's generation will be all over the beer when he's 18, Dave.
He will if I have anything to do with it, to be honest. So.
And it'll be barley wines and expensive Belgian beers, no doubt. So you're drinking the alcohol-free here. Do you get much of an aroma with it?
Yes, I did. I did, actually.
As you'll hear, the guys mention that considering the ABV, they managed to get quite a lot of flavour into it.
I wouldn't disagree with that. You can't necessarily compare it. It's not fair, to compare it to beers with alcohol in, because the whole point of this beer is to be alcohol-free, yet deliver the flavour. I think that is a nigh on impossible task for any alcohol-free beer. I don't mind them. I'll never seek them out particularly. I don't mind it. If I'm driver, I'd probably still fall into the category I'll have a soft drink. I'll have a ginger beer, or I'll have a Coke or an orange and lemonade over an alcohol-free beer.
If you're driving and you have an alcohol-free beer, it's a bit like, here's what you could have won, isn't it? But it's not quite as good.
That said, there's nothing wrong with this at all as an alcohol-free offering. There's a decent bit of flavour to it.
This is an interesting one for you. Which hops do you think are in there?
It's interesting that you say multiple.
Yeah, there's 3 actually.
I think there might be some mosaic in there.
There is.
Now, I'm not convinced that the other 2 are the normal 2. So I don't think it's Citra and Simcoe.
Ah, well, you're wrong. It is the big 3.
It is the big 3. Yeah. That's interesting.
But like we always say, you never know how they've been used. A lot of these hops went into the dry hop, so it's quite heavily dry hopped.
There is a nice bit of dry hop to it. I did notice on the can there's lime juice in this as well.
Okay. Does that come through?
I think there is a little bit, yeah.
I tell you what, I get the impression you quite like this, which is testament to Stewart, because this is their very first alcohol-free beer.
Fair play then, because this easily matches what's out there on the market.
Yeah.
I'm still yet to have any mash gang, and I know a lot of people really rave about that. If this was available and I didn't want the earlier drink choices I mentioned, I would happily have one or two of these, and it doesn't do that thing as well, which I don't like, when they go quite sugary.
Yeah, does it taste more like a soft drink, or can you tell it's an alcohol-free beer?
No, you can definitely tell it's an alcohol-free beer. It's not trying to be sugary sweet or anything. It is beer, just missing the back end of it is quite watery, but it will be because it's missing the alcohol, not to the beer's detriment.
Excellent. Well, the one I've just opened is Gardener's Brew, and when we had Stuart on the podcast, on its episode 51, if you missed it, September 2023, if you want to listen back, we were quite staggered by how innovative they are. We never really thought of them in that way. We just thought, some of their beers are in supermarkets. That's it. We don't really know much else about you. But during the course of that conversation we had there with Nathan, it was so enlightening, and they love to do something different. And this beer, called Gardener's Brew, is something different because it's made without any hops.
Which begs the question, what is it made with?
Well, it's made in conjunction with the Royal Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh. So instead of hops, there is coriander seeds, there's pine needles, there's marigold. Really, really interesting. And it tastes really quite good. There's a bit of a zing to it.
I have had a beer I've had beers that have used coriander in before, and I like that. I like that for a taste.
Now, this is really good. It's got a really, almost a spicy edge to it. And that pine...
That would be the coriander, I would have thought.
And the pine really comes through as well, but not in a really dry and bitter way. It's quite aromatic. It's nice. That's really nice.
How strong is it?
It's 4.5%, and this is in a little 330ml can. They class it as a golden ale, so I was thinking, I don't know whether I'm going to like this, but I do.
So those ingredients, are they tackled in the same way as hops would be?
It's a good question that hopefully the guys will answer when you listen to them. That's the way to deflect it, isn't it? If somebody gave me that and said, what's so different about this beer, I wouldn't be able to say, there's no hops in it. It certainly tastes as though there is. Which just shows you what is possible without the use of hops, doesn't it?
Yeah, so obviously we're so used to, the wild beers. Yes, there will be hops involved, but there's also an awful lot coming out of a hedgerow or the fields and things like that. So this is a slightly different take on that, I guess, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, I like it. Maybe, again, this is something that might catch on, that we might see more of. I wonder how the cost weighs up making a beer like this without hops.
I don't know, actually, because I guess the only thing with it is the quantity of what you need to sort of do it to scale. Is that cheaper, or is it a bit more? Because even though it's something you'd think might be more readily available, it is, but not in the amount you might need.
I'll tell you what, shall we break off at this point and listen to what the guys have got to say and then come back and have the other two beers?
Hi there, guys. It's Nathan here, the head brewer for the Craft Beer Kitchen at Stewart Brewing. We're here in the restaurant, which is also our wonderful private tasting venue, and we're going to taste a few beers and have a wee chat about them.
And I'm Sam, the production manager, and I'm here tasting as well.
So we'll start with Ruby, which is our rhubarb radler, brewed in collaboration with Bonaccord sodas. Lovely pink hue to it from presumably the rhubarb in there.
Yeah, it was a pretty pale base beer before, and then they sent us, Bonaccord sent us their rhubarb flavour compote kind
compound,
of thing.
Compote-y concoction that they make over in the west of Edinburgh. So local company.
Blended with a wheat beer kind of gives a nice kind of pink, hazy hue.
Yeah.
Enough haze on there to kind of give the colour a bit of extra depth. Makes it look pretty juicy. Even the foam's a little pink.
Yeah. Lovely and tangy, sweet, light, refreshing. I get loads of rhubarb. I get a little bit of like apple and pear, vanilla.
You get the base beer coming through as well, though. There's a bit of ester from the base beer.
Yeah.
Which kind of helps that fruitiness pop a little bit more.
A little bit of banana. Mm-hmm. Yeah, lovely beer. We worked with Penfold for the art on this. He's a lovely artist known for doing these sort of avant-garde, geometric, large-scale murals, and yeah, really pleased with the can on that one. Definitely give that a try. I think it's a great summer beer.
And an interesting thing with this is it was one of the first beers we ever pasteurised on site here.
Yep.
Obviously, in brewing and production, we're worried about flavour damage during pasteurisation, so we control the number of PUs as tightly as possible. This beer was a bit atypical in that sense because I think it actually tasted better after the pasteurisation. It's almost making jam out of that fruit that's in there, and it brings another level of sweetness.
We heard that from a few different breweries, didn't we, that the pasteurisation helps these slightly fruitier beers sometimes, just to bring out those fruity notes. Mm-hmm. Shall we do our second beer?
Yep, let's dive in.
So this is a raspberry and honey porridge oat pale, bit of a mouthful, that we brewed in collaboration with our neighbours on the industrial estate, Stoats. So they make fantastic porridge cereal bars that are very addictive. So we wanted to try and recreate that in a beer. So we went over and we nicked a bunch of the freeze-dried raspberries from the production line and went and chucked them into an oaty, lactosey, milky pale ale.
They were great fun in the brew house, by the way. There was about 50 kilos of freeze-dried raspberries. So like the little raspberries you get in like Special K, you know, and they expand, and they suck up water and expand as soon as they get wet. So yeah, we had our brewer Sid saying to me, we've run out of sacks to put them in, so I'm going to have to put them in loose, but I don't think they'll block the heat exchanger. What do you want to do? And it was one of those great situations where it was really too late to do anything else.
Yeah.
So we just went for it.
Better to ask for forgiveness rather than permission.
Yeah. Heat exchangers, blocked heat exchangers, famously unforgiving, but we got away with it this time.
So it's also got a nice sort of slight pink hue, a bit more orangey perhaps, but fruity, creamy, sweet.
Lots of smoothness, isn't there? Lots of gummy glucans from the oats. It just tastes like a cereal bar.
You get the honey coming through as well. It's just like a top note, and then a little bit of a tart finish. I'm quite surprised in how much sort of acidity those raspberries bring to the beer.
Yeah, because it's not a sour beer, but there is a definite tang in there.
Just a little raspberry sharpness. And then I think we worked with Stoats as well for the can art for this one. So we've got the oat bar on there, as well as the colour scheme and some of the design elements. Pretty fun. A little bit creamy, a little bit heavier than the Radler, but still along that same sort of fruity line.
Yeah, we launched it at the Hop Run this year, 10k, 5k or 10k trail run we do with Dirty Events, and we have this beer launching at the finishing line, as well as heaps and heaps of cereal bars, so that was good fun and very
seemed to go down well, yeah. Bit of sugar, a bit of oats to get you back on your feet.
Get your blood sugar back up, yeah.
Number 3, this is our Gardener's Brew. So this is a beer that we brewed with the Royal Botanic Gardens of Edinburgh. So they came over and they said, can you make me an IPA without any hops? And we were like, not really, but we'll give it a shot.
You kind of lean into those descriptors you get for hops, always described as piney and floral.
Yeah.
So why not use pine needles and flowers?
So we chose marigold flowers, pine needles, and coriander seed to try and replicate some of the common aroma compounds, some of the common flavour characteristics that you get from the usual hops in sort of a standard American IPA. And we just sort of put them in a base beer to try and see what happens, and it turned out really, really nice.
Coriander seeds we've used in the past to kind of augment especially Citra forward IPAs. They're pretty much pure linalool, so the oils you're getting from the hops found also in greater amounts in coriander seeds, so you do get a bit of that kind of Citra-like character.
And the pine needles are very piney, of course, so echoes of Cascade maybe there. And then the marigold are quite intensely floral. It's usually when you see floral as a descriptor, it's quite subtle, it's quite classy, but this is
you're in a decidedly botanical beer though.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think, is this just made with hops? You can definitely tell there's some other stuff in there that's not normally present in a standard golden ale.
Very nice and fresh, very refreshing, very different.
Especially on the taste as well. I kind of expected this to smell very floral but taste like a normal beer. It's almost the other way around.
Yeah.
It's not an intensely floral aroma, but the flavour is quite interesting, a little bit spicy, and just interesting. It's hard to put your finger on.
I've not really tasted much like it, I don't think. Very unusual, very nice. And the Botanics came up with the art for this one. Lovely sort of graphic design on that one. It's available in the Botanic Gardens and here on site and online. I'm not sure you can get it many other places, but worthwhile trying if you do see it around, or ordering in. And then our final beer is another exciting project, which is Stewart's AF, or Stewart's Alcohol Free. So it's our first foray into alcohol-free beers, and I think we've done a pretty good job.
I was really happy with it, and as someone who didn't really get involved in the recipe development and just kind of watched from a distance and waited for the beer to come down the line, when I tasted it, I was like, really nailed it in recipe development and in the brew house through cellaring. It's not an easy thing to do, to get body and complexity into these beers. Limited fermentation, so they can risk not tasting like a beer or tasted like an unfermented wort. But this is clean, tastes beer-like. The dry hop has worked well, which sometimes doesn't happen in alcohol-free beers because of the lack of alcohol during the dry hop. But this is really great. It's bursting with aroma. It tastes like a beer.
So it's a good point, isn't it, that we have to be on top of our game at each part of the process in order to make this happen and make it happen well. Like, the recipe has to be good. We have to work out what we're doing, what goes in to make it as tasty as possible. We've got to do everything right in the brew house to make sure the process is right. All of the cellaring, all of the dry hopping, all of the canning and pasteurization, every single step along the way has to be pretty much perfect for this to be as good as it is. And
particularly mashing in a way that gets you the right limit of attenuation, because if you go over 0.5% and it's 0.9, then you can't sell it, you can't dilute it, because then it's really going to taste thin. So you need to nail that first time, the degree of fermentation. So we used a low attenuating yeast, right? And then a high proportion of specialty malt in the grist. Came together and came in under 0.5% just. So one of those right first time moments.
It's got a little bit of body to it, a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of that specialty malt character.
So I'd be lying if I said that could be a 5% beer, but I don't think that's ever the case with alcohol-free beer. It's got that, I would say, a good alcohol-free beer taste. It does taste like it's an isotonic drink that's going to be good for you, hydrate you.
It's a little bit minerally. The water treatment's quite nice on it. It's a little bit sugary sweet, but then you get quite a lot of nice hop aroma from it, which I think is like the most... It's what sets it apart from other alcohol-free beers I've tried. I've not really had anything with this kind of hop character in it. We've used Citra, Simcoe, and Mosaic hops in it. Really big dry hop. And I think you get all of those characteristics with a nice, easy drinking, isotonic, alcohol-free pale ale. It's
really the perfect sports drink, which, with a little bit of alcohol maybe seems like something you shouldn't say, but, talking about 0.5%, it's less than soy sauce, it's less than a ripe banana. And I'm just really enjoying it as the weather gets a bit warmer, something sat in the fridge at home, come back from a run or a long hot day in the brewery, and it's so refreshing to drink one of those in about 5 minutes. That's how I'm enjoying it.
A member of our team, Ed's he's been training for a triathlon recently, and I think he's been drinking it instead of anything else, replacing his Lucozade and all of those other isotonics with Stewart's AF. So he's been enjoying it.
And the triathlon he's doing is actually the Ironman, so it's a pretty extreme version of a triathlon. So if Ed gets over the line, then maybe our claims have a bit of substance.
Yeah, good stuff. So I think that's everything. I hope you guys enjoy the beers. It's a really nice overview of what we're doing, the different stuff that we're doing at the moment. And can't wait to see what you think.
Well, a massive thanks there to Nathan, head brewer for the Craft Beer Kitchen at Stewart Brewing, and also to production manager Sam. It's really enlightening to hear what you've been doing up there and what went into making these 4 different beers. And thanks for stepping into the breach and explaining all that. So, Dave, what are you moving on to next?
I'm having Ruby, 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 which is the Project 7 series, one of the new ones, and it is a rhubarb radler.
2.5%.
Yeah, I've moved up from 0.5 to 2.5.
You're really going for it tonight.
Now, radlers, very European, and essentially our equivalent going back a few decades would be lager shandy tops, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But
Not sure I've ever ordered a lager top or a lager.
Have you not?
Probably a shandy, but not a lager top.
Okay. The lager tops, well, I haven't done it in a long time, but it's enjoyable in the right environment.
Do you ever hear people ask for a lager top anymore? Was that very sort of turn of the century sort of thing? Do people still ask for that?
Well, it does feel that way, doesn't it? Whereas on the continent, radler it's been its own thing for a long time.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's big business, and the whole beer with lemon and increasingly other fruits, that's been a thing for a long time over there, and it's not sort of viewed in the same way whatsoever. You get radlers on tap when you go to various places, don't you? And it's the thing. So it's nice to see it starting to make its way over here.
I think we're going to see more of these throughout the rest of the summer, and then maybe take off even more next year. I think it's going to become quite a thing. So this is a rhubarb radler, but it's not just, as we've heard, it's not just rhubarb in there.
It is a wheat beer blended with rhubarb soda. So it's tart yet sweet now. I must say on a first taste, I don't get really any tartness. It's sweet, but it's not sickly sweet.
Yeah. For the record, I cheated. I actually had this the other day, the day it arrived, because I couldn't wait for it. And it was a really hot day, and I thought, got to get some of that, damn me. And it was really enjoyable.
That's great. That's really nice.
But there's also apple and pear in there as well, and I think that comes through.
It does, doesn't it? It comes through at the end, and it almost, what it makes it taste more like is drinking a bit like a Vimto or a Ribena for me. It's lovely. Just like, weirdly, when we had the very hot weather, it's cooled off a little bit now, hasn't it? We did have a week of hot weather, and happened to be out on a Sunday. I actually saw previous podcast guest from some bottles.
Oh, right. Okay, excellent.
Yep. Picked up a couple of beers off him again, had a chat to him.
Oh, nice.
And then went and had lunch and went to one of the places in Ipswich which has always had a couple of beers on keg and maybe something on cask. The cask offerings not normally as good, but there's always cans in the fridge as well. And anyway, the keg offerings they looked a bit disappointing. They didn't fit the weather. I think one was a best bitter and one was a stout, and it was a bit like it was a bit disappointing. And then the other thing which I hadn't seen before was Damn Lemon by Estrella.
Ah, yes, you mentioned this to me at the time.
I'll give it a go mainly because of the heat. 3.2% lemon radler essentially. I thought, I'm not going to have very high hopes of this. I'll have one as a first quencher. Well, anyway, we all had a pint, and this is a group of 2 men, 2 women, including my wife. And Katie's not a huge beer drinker, as we've sort of alluded to in previous episodes. Well, anyway, everyone loved it. I certainly had a second pint of it. And the very next day, Katie goes off shopping. She comes back with 8 bottles of it. I haven't had one. Oh, no, I might have had one.
Has she been drinking it?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I'm prompted. And she was very excited about this Radlin. I would have offered it to her tonight, but unfortunately, Katie has gone to bed already because she's knackered, so she didn't get to try this can of Radler, but there is still one other, so...
Oh, yeah, it was kind of sent two, weren't they? So, yeah. Yeah, I've had a few sort of summer beers recently. In fact, one of them was a Radler when I was at the Liverpool Craft Brew Festival a couple of weeks ago. And it was one called Sacred Shandy by Top Rope Brewing in Liverpool. Quite apt, actually, because Top Rope, when we saw them, were about to pull the plug and close down, having been on the scene for a good number of years. But I don't know if anybody has seen on the socials, they have been saved. They've been thrown a lifeline, and somebody has bought into the company to ensure that they carry on, which is great news, because they're really lovely people with some really lovely beers, including this one, Sacred Shandy, which was a lime and mint Radler.
Nice.
It was good, and it's not like really drinking a beer. I mean, it still is a beer, but it just goes down so well. Hot weather barbecue beers, aren't they?
But I think this is their niche, isn't it? I think this is when they come into their own. And unfortunately, perhaps that's why they thrive a bit more on the continent, where you're guaranteed a bit of a better spread of good weather, not just sort of a week here or there.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Well, talking about stouts and things as you were a minute ago and it being the wrong time of year for them because it's warm and everything, I did have a couple of stouts at Liverpool Craft Brew Festival, one of them by Top Rope, and this was fascinating. The beer was outstanding. It was a collab with Emperors, who, are synonymous with ridiculous stouts that taste amazing. But what was fascinating was this beer didn't go on until 2:30. So they were telling all the customers there, this beer will come on at 2:30. At 2:30, there was an enormous queue halfway around the building for this stout. It is incredible just watching people queue up for a big stout, a big double-digit ABV stout. People are all over it. It's fascinating. No other beer seems to be able to command such attention from beer fanatics as a big stout.
Going back to that Time Out article, the only sense I would say from that is whenever I talk to anyone in brewing and that and sort of trot out the, there's only so much you can do with a pale, isn't there? It is always met with, yeah. Funnily enough, actually, the most recent conversation I had was with someone in an American brewery, Whitman Brewery. We were having a chat about it, and I said, so what's sort of coming in America then? What do you think's happening? And his main takeaways were that pales are still popular, but it's going to more West Coast again. And it's also mountain
IPAs, which we touched on the last episode.
And the other interesting thing he said is it is the low ABV stuff, but also beers with CBD, which isn't quite here yet.
There was a little phase of a couple of months where there was a few of them knocking around. Northern Monk did one.
He said that's the next thing that's coming along. But yeah, that rambling answer to the pale versus the stout, like big stouts. There's still more you can do, isn't there? There's more combos you can put together.
You're never going to get a queue around the room for a 6% IPA, are you? In the same way that a big stout can command that audience.
Not anymore, I don't think. I think there was probably a time when all the sort of hops were fresh. There's new variants being done, isn't there? But I'm yet to, with the exception probably of Nectaron, which I do think has got a really good profile and you can really taste it. I'm yet to find any of these other varieties, either when they're under their experimental names or when they do get released, are yet to really deliver anything different. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I've got a few favourites, but I know what you mean. And I guess this is why Citra, Simcoe and Mosaic are your big three, because that's what people go back to time and time again, because you know what you're getting with them.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I sort of love things like I just said, Nectaron I really enjoy. I like Azaka. I like Strata. I even quite like Galaxy increasingly. But I'm just a bit more sceptical of the sort of the cryos and
all this newfangled stuff, eh?
I'm not convinced. I feel like it's sort of perhaps rebadging something that's not really essentially any different.
Fair point. Right, I've got my second Stewart Brewing beer now. This is another Project 7 series beer. This is their Raspberry Porridge and Honey Oat Pale, made in conjunction with Stoats, who are on the same trading estate as Stewart's in Edinburgh. And they deal in snack bars, raspberry snack bars. And as you'll have heard from the guys there, this beer has got 50 kilograms of their freeze-dried raspberries in it. It smells nice. Let's see what it tastes like.
Well, it's a similar colour to the Rhubarb Radler, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a very similar colour.
I mean, I love raspberries. And also, interestingly, this honey idea, that was the other thing my American friend that I was talking, he said honey beers. That's the other thing.
Right.
The last wave of American beers that dropped, there was a few honey ones in there in the UK, so perhaps that's something else that might be adopted.
We've had them over the years, haven't we? But it's never really proliferated the scene. There's a few come in every now and again and they drift away again. They've never really taken over. Perhaps interesting. Something else to look out for. This is nice. This is lovely and creamy and raspberry-y, but it's not in your face. It's quite toned down.
Is it sweet raspberry or is it tart raspberry?
Fence sitting. It's somewhere in between. It's not sweet. It's not tart. Bit heavier than the Radler, but doesn't taste very strong. It is 4.8%, so it's double the strength. It doesn't taste that, actually. I like that. It's got a very interesting nose, this has. It's kind of quite, it must just be me, but because there's no reason for it. It smells quite smoky.
Really?
Perhaps that's just me. I'm sure it is. But it's all there, but subtle. Dialed down rather than dialed up. I like that. Like I said before, our expectations of Stuart when we first came across them were far less than they're able to deliver. Their beers are really good and they put some really decent stuff out there.
And they're not afraid to push the envelope. I think they're, for what I know of and what we've sort of found along the way, they're the best example of having that developmental arm where they can do what they like and really maximising it.
For anybody who's never tried any of their beers, get onto their website and get some, because you really won't be disappointed. They're excellent. And very nice people as well. We come across some lovely people over the years who've been doing this podcast, but they're lovely guys. We often talk to Lewis on their lovely guy. They're, all lovely people. Those 4 beers we've just had there, I would absolutely recommend having them. And they're really well priced as well, aren't they? This is another thing.
I was just looking at that while you were talking about it. The Radler, £3.40 a can. The alcohol-free, £2.50. Your Raspberry Pale, £4.10. And they do some other different bits as well. They've got at the moment a chocolate hazelnut and coconut barrel-aged stout.
Ooh, I had a couple of beers recently from Northern Monk. Lisa brought them back from Sainsbury's one day. They were sort of summer beers, and they're okay off the supermarket shelf, but they're £3 a can in the supermarket. These aren't much more.
No, they're not. And funnily enough, I had exactly the same experience, and I had one of theirs. I thought they'd actually started to head towards the Tiny Rebel.
Which one was it?
It was a lychee and...
Oh, yeah, I had that.
Wasn't it sweet?
Yeah. Was it lychee and coconut?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was really heavy on the coconut.
Like I say, it reminded me of Tiny Rebel in the fact that you couldn't fault that they said it was going to taste of those things.
It was good for that.
It was heading towards that artificially very sweet taste, not really tasting a beer anymore. You're just tasting of it's alcoholic fruit juice.
Yeah, there was no nuance to it at all. It was sort of...
It felt mass-produced. Whereas these beers definitely aren't, that we've just been enjoying tonight. You can tell there's a lighter touch, a smaller tea when it comes through.
This is where we talk about our favourite beers since our last episode. And do you remember, Dave, there was a time when nearly every tried and tested belonged to a certain brewer of sour beers in Scotland.
It did for you, didn't it?
Yeah.
Your membership card was 001 for Vault City for a while.
Yeah, and then I've sort of not had so much of their stuff recently, but my tried and tested for this time has to be a Vault City beer. And this is the ridiculous blueberry muffin waffle cone crunch triple scoop. Try saying that after a few drinks. Oh, man. It was just like, it was 8.3%. And I shared a third of it with my neighbour. We both said, oh, this is amazing. We need to get another one. So we had another third and shared that too. And when you have a beer and then you want more of it, it's good, don't you? But this was just blueberries and tart and honeycomb and ice cream. And it was just like a super indulgent creation that tasted amazing. Sounds bizarre, blueberry muffin waffle cone crunch and all the rest of it. I really didn't want to enjoy it because it does sound so ridiculous, but I did enjoy it. It was awesome, and I would have it again if I saw it. So yeah, that is my tried and tested. What about you, Dave? Have you had any interesting beers recently?
Not as interesting as that. I'm a little bit shocked as to that being your selection, because it felt it felt like you'd really moved away from those kind of beers.
Yeah, and I have. I know. You saw the other day. I was enjoying a smoked lager the other night.
But if it's done well, it's done well. As we say, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I don't even know if you'll have heard the brewery that mine's from. As I said on the previous episode, we went up to Derbyshire for a little break, and I did manage to get hold of some beers and come back. This one isn't from Derbyshire, but I'd never seen them before and got it from a bottle shop in that area, and it is from Winkle. Have you heard of Winkle? No. Wincle. They're a microbrewery from Cheshire. They would be based in more of a traditional sense, I would say, looking at what they do. But the reason that I picked this one out was in bottle, it appealed, and it is their Caribbean Export Stout, which was 7%.
Nice.
And it was rum and it was sweet and it was strong, but all within reasonable measures. It wasn't overpowering with rum. It didn't get super sickly sweet as if there was too much sugar in there. It was a rum export stout. You could sort of see, you'd think, yes, I can see this would be exported to the West Indies, etc., something like that. It really hit the brief. I've never seen their stuff down this way. As I say, it's all that was in bottles, but it does make me want to sort of seek out a bit more of their stuff.
That sounds amazing.
It was very enjoyable. And speaking of things that were enjoyable, as I said at the start of the episode, we went to Gruffest, the inaugural Gruffest, which was in Stratford St Mary, which is only 20 minutes away from us. And Gareth Gruff, from the previous episode, this was his first ever beer festival, and it was a big hit.
When he was on talking to us, he mentioned it then, didn't he? And he was selling tickets for it and really looking forward to it and putting all the planning into action for it. And you were there. How many breweries or different beers were there? What was the setup?
They had, I believe it was 14 cask on. There was a Linden machine which had 2 from Jackrabbit, who were local. And there was also Prosecco was going on. There was wine. Gareth had his own beers on. The porter, which we really enjoyed when we spoke to him, is even better on cask. That was really, really good. He also had a Ruby, which we didn't have, which he's brewed since. I tried that. That was nice. It was his beers, and then the other breweries involved on cask, they were quite... There wasn't Abbeydale knocking around, but there was sort of also more local, traditional people. But as an experience, it was perfect for what he'd done. It was sort of done in a village hall setting. There was a food truck. There was live music. It was spot on for the audience size. So if he sort of has a few more tickets next year released, or however he wants to do it, I think he's got it all there, and he can just sort of grow it organically without making it too much of a headache. I heartily endorse it. It was one of the nicest sort of community, family-friendly festivals I've been to in a long time.
And there's that word again, community, which is we're hearing more and more of it.
There's definitely a lot of local people there who knew him and knew the beer and everything, which was great to see.
Well, let's hear from Gareth, and he can tell us all about it.
Hi, this is Gareth from Gruff Brewery. I'd just like to thank everyone who attended the first Gruff Fest on Saturday, the 8th of June at Stratford St Mary. We had a great selection of beers on, 14 cask ales, 5 of which were mine, ciders, Proseccos and Bromley Brook, our local vineyard. We managed to sell out on most of the cask ales, and there was a vote for Beer of the Festival, and I'm glad to say that my porter, which is named P2, was the outright winner. So I'm pleased to say I now have an award-winning beer. It was a great day for everyone there. The village was out, and all beer drinkers came out to support me. Sign of a good beer festival was as everyone left, they all shook my hand and said, "You are doing this next year, aren't you?" So yes, we will be arranging Gruff Fest 2 for June next year in Stratford St Mary. More to follow on my Facebook site. Big thank you to Daftaboutcraft for all their support and help, and it was great to see one of the Daves at the beer fest. Take care, guys. Cheers. Bye.
Daftaboutcraft.
It's Brewer's Wife time now. It's the part of the podcast where Sam from the Copper Beech Brewing Company in Worcestershire joins us. Hello, Sam. How you doing?
Hello. I'm good. I am good. I've been good for about a month now.
Yeah,
Get
you're
in.
Sickness-free.
Yes.
Your voice is back to normal.
But I sound perfectly normal.
Yeah.
Thank
Don't
God.
want to tempt fate here, but it's all good.
Well, it's only a matter of time, but I'll enjoy it while it lasts.
And I was just telling you, just before we hit the button there, that people are really enjoying the Brewer's Wife on Daftaboutcraft. I had several people come up to me recently, not just at random, like in the street, but at beer events, saying they really enjoyed it, love hearing the stories. So that's good.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's nice when you get a bit of a nod of appreciation from somebody, isn't it? You realise that what you're doing, people do like it out there.
I enjoy telling my little tales.
Well, what little tales have you got for us this time? That's what we want to know.
Wow, so I thought I would talk about an event we did May Bank Holiday weekend, the last one of the month. We got asked really last minute if we wanted to be involved in it was a new event. It was the first one that they were doing. It was at Stratford Racecourse, and we'd not got anything booked for that weekend. And we kind of decided we were going to make a bit of a holiday of it, because that's what constitutes as a holiday nowadays, unfortunately, for us.
Yeah, no 2 weeks abroad anymore.
No,
It's
sadly
2 days at
not.
Stratford instead.
Basically. So the plan was my mum and dad were going to come with us, and they were going to kind of dip in and out of the festival / childcare duties, so that Dan and I could maybe go out for a meal, and maybe Delilah could kind of have a bit of time with them, and we would do the festival together and actually be able to work together, because we actually rarely are able to do events and things together. of course, when you make plans, what happens? My mum was too unwell. That is the day before. She said she just wasn't well enough to come. The event was running Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I was booked to do a wedding, was leaving really early. I can't remember where it was now. It was somewhere over the other side of... I had to travel about an hour, I think, to get to Stratford from there.
It was somewhere that involved you going on the M5 because you sent me a picture.
Oh, of the services?
Of the services on the M5, those really posh ones we've talked about before.
That's right, because you'd not long had that discussion on here. And the coffee cup had the names of them all on there, didn't it? So yeah, it was somewhere over that direction. So I wasn't actually getting to Stratford until about 3 o'clock. So my dad and Dan had to run the event and look after Delilah for that few hours, which I think was a little bit stressful.
I can imagine your dad losing his temper.
No, I think he wasn't too bad. I think it was just probably as useful as a chocolate teapot from like a childcare perspective. And when I arrived, no parenting had been done. The poor child had no sun cream on. It was a really hot day. She had no sun cream on, so she was all red across the bridge of her nose. I think she probably hadn't had a nappy change in a few hours. And within about 5 minutes, Dan was laughing because she was sun creamed up. She had a hat on. She had a snack. She had a fresh nappy. But, fair play to him. He obviously was trying to do two things at once, which we all know men aren't as good at as women.
No, especially when it comes to kids.
Yeah, so it was a really nice day, the Saturday. The weather was really nice. Lots of traders there. There was quite a lot of food traders. I think there was 2 Greek type stands. There was about 3 Jamaican type ones, like jerk food. And so there was quite a lot of similar ones. So I don't know if the event organisers had really kind of considered, because a lot of the times you go to these events and they'll only have one of each thing.
Or maybe 2. I find food festivals slightly weird because once you've eaten, you've eaten.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to have a burger and then a pizza and then
I don't know. Some people do.
Do they?
Yeah. Some people will have they'll get something from one place and share it, and then they might get something else. Yeah, I've known that to be the case.
I always think it's very different with beer though, because if there's lots of beer people, you'll go and
you try them all,
try more, but not for. Well, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Well, maybe I'll place my importance on the alcohol rather than the food.
I wonder. So the Saturday was fine. When we got back we booked an Airbnb that was about 5 minutes away. Put Delilah to bed. Dan was so exhausted. I got downstairs from putting Delilah to bed and he was asleep on the sofa.
Yeah, how was your meal out, Sam?
Yeah, it didn't happen, did it? So I sent him up to bed. So then I ended up going to the local Morrison's and getting myself a bit of tea and sitting on this, because it was an Airbnb that was just someone's house, so it was just sitting on this random sofa with a glass of wine and a bit of dinner. So yeah, the first night was a bit of a washout. And then the next day, the forecast was really bad weather-wise. I think it was forecast for storms. But actually, the way it worked out, it kind of missed us. So it was lovely. But you know what it's like when you're looking for something to do on the weekend? If you look at the weather forecast, it says it's going to be storms. You're not going to pick to go to a food festival.
Yeah, an outdoor food festival.
Exactly that. So it was quite a quiet day. And actually, a lot of the traders at the end of the day, well, I say a handful of the traders decided not to come back and do the Monday. And then on the Monday, unfortunately, the weather wasn't very good at all. It was kind of all right for the first couple of hours, and then it was really
we got there about 2 hours before it was supposed to close, and you were one of the only people left.
Yeah, I think we were trying to hang on, but then we decided we were going to pack up. So we had this idea then, right, we'll pack up and leave early, and we'll go and get some dinner on the way home, and we'll get home early, and Dan will be able to pack up everything in the get it back in the brewery in a nice amount of time, rather than finishing at 6 and then getting home quite late.
If people are wondering where this story is going, there is a punchline coming. It's coming.
It didn't happen, did it? So the plan was Dan had got this random delivery that needed to go out to Evesham. So we were going to take this delivery out to Evesham and grab some dinner with you guys somewhere around. So we kind of hung around while he packed up, and then, that was it. I was saying to you, I knew there was something else that I was forgetting about this story when I was trying to remember it a minute ago. Everything was packed onto the bed of the truck, and he put the stuff... You're laughing in recollection, aren't you? Yeah. So he put the stuff that needed to go on the roof, went to kind of secure it all up, and he'd left I don't know what they're called, like the winch rope. Is it a winch?
Some sort of...
like one of them things that you crank to tighten.
Yeah.
It's basically like a securing rope.
Yeah, nobody could see it anywhere, could they?
It was in the bed of the truck underneath all of the bar and the kegs.
You see, the reason I forgot this is because this happens so often. whether it be, sometimes it's keys that are left in there. You have to get it all back out to get the keys. Sometimes it's the winch or the straps that hold the bar down on the roof. It could be anything.
I remember ringing him once when he was hunting for his keys at one of the festivals that you guys were at, and he was so stressed, and they ended up being, in the bottom of the blooming bed of the truck. So cue this kind of like panic about, we're going to have to unload everything to get this rope tie, whatever it was, out of the bed of the truck. But luckily, your very live and flexible daughter managed to get a coat hanger and kind of fish it out, didn't she? Yeah. We managed to get her into one of the nooks and crannies, and she managed to get it out. So that was no sort of huge disaster.
It's coming.
So I'm in the car with Delilah. You guys are in your car, and we're like, right, so we'll go and do this delivery and we'll meet you here.
Thinking we have a nice drink somewhere, a glass of wine maybe, something nice to eat.
Yeah.
All looking good.
Nice little evening.
Yep.
So off you drive, and then I get in the car and I drive about 2 yards. Dan is ringing my phone, so I'm like, hello. He's like, the truck won't start. I'm like, what?
Absolutely dead.
Just no battery on the truck. I was like, right. I actually think he was a little bit less calm than how I've just relayed it. I think what he actually said was, who left the ignition on at any point?
Who did leave the ignition on?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one, that, because...
I'll put it this way, who did you blame it on?
Well, my dad turned the ignition on to open the sunroof for me, because Delilah had to have a nap in the truck that day on my lap, because the weather wasn't good enough to put her in the pushchair and push around. So... But it was also still really warm, even though it was stormy. So I had maybe left the air conditioning running for the entirety of her nap, which was about an hour. And I think I'd also done it the day before, which Dan still doesn't know. He'll be hearing this for the first time now.
We should point out that a lot of the time when we tell stories on here, this is when Dan listens to this, which he does usually in the brewery when he's brewing, he hears stuff that he had no idea about.
I mean, I was never going to admit that it was 2 days in a row that I'd done that, because the day before we'd just sat in there for a bit with the air conditioning on, and the truck was parked on the site and it didn't move basically from when it arrived to when it obviously...
So basically this truck is parked up for 3 days, didn't move anywhere, but during that time the aircon's been on for hours. Radio as well, bet the radio was on.
It might have been on with the volume down, I don't know.
Yeah, it was on. It was on. It just goes to show, doesn't it, that you make these plans, all you want to do is sell a bit of beer. It's never as easy as all that.
And obviously the event, if we'd have had anything riding on that event, because it wasn't the best, these things are always out of your control. Even the ones that you think are going to do really well sometimes don't. There's lots of different factors that go into it. But a lot of the time you kind of, now, because we've been doing it so long, we do get to a point where we're like, well, this one's going to be really good. We know we're going to make within a bracket. Sometimes you put that in place and you're kind of relying on that income.
Yeah.
So luckily we hadn't done that for this, because it was all a bit last minute. Had we been relying on the income, we would have been in big trouble.
I should just point out, actually, there was another brewery there selling at Stratford, and it's well worth mentioning these guys.
Well, is it pronounced Vibish?
Vibish.
Yeah. Lovely guys, really, really nice. Dan basically they just had a bit of a jolly together, didn't they, for the couple of days? I mean, they're great beer, nice guys. They're based in...
Wiltshire.
Oh, thank you. I actually didn't know. But yeah, so they just sat chatting about all things brewery, didn't they, for hours a day, which was really nice for them, I think. They enjoyed themselves.
And they were kind enough to give me some beers as well, for me and Dave B. And they'll be coming on the podcast.
So there you go.
You never know where you're going to meet future podcast guests.
So all was not in vain.
This is Daftaboutcraft.
Cue the dramatic music. We haven't heard this for a few months.
And now it's time for Hype or Tripe.
This is where we have a beer and discuss whether basically it's good or bad, if it lives up to the hype or not. But this Hype or Tripe isn't necessarily about the beer or the brewery. This is about the hops involved.
And specifically the hop involved.
Yes.
And the hop we are talking about is Kahia?
I reckon it must be Kahia Nelson. Now, the brewery involved here, I want to cast your mind back, Dave. Cast your mind back to episode 7 of Daftaboutcraft. It's January 2021. We've been going for about 6 months. It seems like a lifetime ago now. And we've got one of the breweries on Brew to Me. Can you remember who it was? Well, you know who it is because you know who this is.
I know who it is, but it would have been Flock.
It was Flock, yes. And Flock is the brewery behind this beer that we've got right here. So, yeah, they've been on the podcast before, but not for a very long time.
No, and they're another one of those breweries that go along, not quietly, because I'd say they've probably got a little bit, well, they have got bigger since 2021, or it feels like they have. But I see Flock beers in bottle shops all the time.
You kind of see them and they're part of the landscape, aren't they?
That's a great way of putting it.
Yes.
They are part of the landscape. But do I think of them as doing anything, it sounds harsh, but doing anything different to a lot of other breweries?
Yeah.
No, not really, to be honest.
Well, they are here with this beer.
Yeah. And it's nice to see because it did grab, when I flagged it to you, didn't I? So it grabbed my attention. I was like, oh, I don't know this hop. Oh, it's Flock. Okay, this is a bit different. Oh, crikey. I haven't drunk it yet, but I've just poured it and I got a huge waft of the nose from it. And it's, it's a good 10 inches away from me.
Well, this hop is grown by Freestyle Hops in Sunrise Valley in New Zealand.
The big thing to do with this hop is passion fruit. The 2023 version of this blend, so not necessarily the one we got now, combined Nelson Sauvin and Raquel hops with New Zealand passion fruit, and the passion fruit was dried, the seeds removed, and then blended with the hops. So it's a bit of a different process to what we would sort of think of normally.
Yeah, it's quite intense, isn't it, that aroma?
I got it. It's done that thing. I haven't had this in a long time. I open the can and you get a big fruit hit as it sort of wafts out, and now that smells quite dank. Don't know about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I get the dankness.
It smells really dank to me. I don't get any fruit on the nose now.
I tell you what it reminds me of is when we first had a beer with Cryopop in it. Do you remember?
Yes.
That's what it reminds me of.
Short-lived that. Cryopop, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Yeah, there's definitely oh, that's interesting. There's certainly a lot of dankness to that.
Didn't expect this.
It's very thick and full, isn't it?
Yeah, so we should say this beer itself is called Plenty, and it is an 8% dipper.
It certainly is plenty, isn't it? Crikey.
It is plenty. So they say it's a bold double IPA with 2024 Cahier Nelson hops or Cahier, delivering intense tropical fruit flavours, bright citrus notes, and a hint of herbal undertones. Perfectly balanced with flaked oats and wheat for a smooth, robust malt backbone.
Yes, this is the very latest incarnation of this hop then. Wow. I've never really thought about when hops are harvested and how long it takes the hops to get to us via the beer, but it's quite a quick process by the sounds of it then.
I'm interested to know what you're getting from this.
Right, well, first of all, we should say this is a double IPA. This is 8%, so straight away we're in thick territory, aren't we?
Uh-huh.
And that certainly is thick. There's a huge mouthfeel there. Those oats, a little bit creamy.
It is.
The herbalness they mention, I get the herbal undertones. Don't know whether I necessarily like those, but let's go.
Do you get any fruit? Because the herbal undertones are what I get. This to me feels like such a flashback because I could easily I've talked about it so many times, but I haven't for a while. This could be a verdant beer for me.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. It could be, couldn't it?
It really could.
It could be verdant, but without that vegetal edge to it. I don't get that so much.
That's mainly what I'm getting. I get no fruit on the nose now. It just smells sort of hoppy, danky. You know what it smells like? It smells like the beer we really don't like anymore. It smells like putty.
So this is Cahier Nelson. So presumably related to Nelson Sauvin, which I always say is the ultimate dank hop. This is for me is very, very like Nelson Sauvin. I don't think it's that much different. I'm sure somebody can and will correct me. But if you said to me you're drinking Nelson Sauvin there, I wouldn't disagree with anybody.
Well, no, you're not wrong in the sense of the hop itself. So last year's version, I assume this is the same again. So the blend combined Nelson Sauvin and Raquel. So I suspect you've got your two hops combined again. And as I say, with New Zealand passion fruit, that was 2023. I'm not sure about 2024. So yes, I think that's why you're getting the Nelson taste. I get it a bit, but I prefer straight Nelson Sauvin.
Right, okay. Something else here I read on the tasting notes is the passion fruit, lime, candied melon. Any trace of any of those?
I think if you at a push lime.
Tastes it's 8%, doesn't it? I can feel that.
It does actually. That's not a bad thing. I don't mind that. I don't know if I like either the hop or the beer that much.
We're not really critiquing the beer or the people who made the beer here, I don't think.
No.
It's more what that hop is doing. I think the beer probably is very well made.
It's interesting because we've had this before, haven't we, where hops come along and then people do it and certain brewers will do it really well and others not quite as well.
I'd be intrigued to know. There are actually a few of the breweries out there that have used this hop. Hackney Church have used it, Track have done a beer with it, and Arpus have used it, to name a few. It would be really quite interesting, actually, to get hold of one of those and see how it measures up against this. Maybe we can do that for the next episode.
Definitely. As I say, I might not necessarily like this beer that much or the hop, but it might be that I have it from, as you say, one of those breweries, and the hop does exactly the same thing, and that's just what the hop does, and that's what this is, and it just might not be to my taste. As you say, there's nothing wrong with how the beer's been brewed. It's not been brewed badly or anything.
Hops can be very versatile, and they can also be very one note as well, can't they? There's nothing else in here. This is Kahia Nelson, which is a blend of Nelson Sauvin and Racao. There's nothing else going on in there, is there?
No. It's just Kahia Nelson T90. That's what the can says. So
I think it's hard, isn't it? We need something to measure it against, don't we? So we're going to have to, let's do somebody else's Kahia Nelson beer on the next episode. We know what this tastes like. For me, like sometimes your beer develops in the glass. It changes. This is quite one note, isn't it? Every mouthful is the same.
Yes, I was sort of hoping that might happen a bit. I don't think it's not.
Nothing's changing, is it? Well, it doesn't have to, but I'm not sure we like that particular one note that it is. I think we're struggling with it a little bit. I hate sitting on the fence, as anybody who has heard my top rants will testify to, but I don't think we can make an actual judgment until we've tried this hop in another beer.
I think that is a very fair way to look at it, because there's no need to pile onto this beer and say, oh, it's rubbish, don't like the hop, because the beer itself is fine, but we're not enjoying it particularly. But that's not to say that the hop itself might not be good or can be used differently.
It's like you're in a swamp and you can't get out. You sort of...
It smells like it and all.
It's eating you. You're sort of trying to clamber out and you can't do it. You just keep pulling you down. I'm sure really a lot of our listeners who like their big ABV beers will love this, but we're just struggling with it a little bit. So what we're going to do, what do you reckon for that next episode? Track or Hackney Church?
Well, I've been having a little look, and I've not actually had any Hackney Church. I've been on my hit list for a little while.
Oh, okay. Well, let's do them.
And I can see that, and interestingly, they do a beer called Things Can Only Get Wetter, which is a hazy IPA, 6.3%, so a bit better.
Yes.
Well, not a bit better, but different. And it's not just got that hop in it. It's a mix. There's some strata and some chinook. And if it's got chinook, that should be the bitterness, and the strata should be adding the sort of holding it together a bit. So I would expect it there. If it's going to be a fruity hop, as it sort of promises, it's got a chance to do that there with other bits helping it out.
Maybe it will really shine with some of the hops around it.
We'll have to find out.
Well, that is just about your lot for now. From the Daftaboutcraft team, myself, Dave D, and Dave B, we'll be back at the end of July with episode 63, all of your favourite features and much, much more. And we'll see you then.
Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.